So, before I continue talking about my progress and how I was shifting week by week, I want to stop and talk about a big moment that I had identifying an emotion in my mind and in my body. I don't remember what week this happened in at all. And I don't think there's a way that I can probably trace this because I wrote a post about it in the community, but it would take me ages. So I just want to talk about it. And by going through one of the exercises in the video courses, so this again, like this insight came from the video courses section of the platform, I got in touch with a very clear feeling of self hatred. Now, this was so surprising to me because I actually have, I think, a positive self talk in my head. I think even my inner critic will cut me a lot of slack. And I think my inner critic is often a lot more like an inner, like life coach than a critic. But perhaps there were messages of criticism that were buried in my subconscious, and that only through the exercises they came up, because whatever was on my conscious mind was like, okay, this is not great. Or I would even have thoughts of like, oof, like I made a big mistake, or I didn't act right, or like I completely shot myself in the foot here. I would say I had like consciousness um of some of the times when I wasn't doing great. But all of my conscious thought was like, okay, we made a mistake, we've learned a lesson, let's do better next time. Because remember, the whole point of, I think, my anxious, insecure talk is always like, get better, fix, fix, fix. So, mistake equals fix something. I didn't realize that buried in my subconscious mind and in my body, there was a lot of self hatred, like a lot. I also call this like self loathe. Um, but how it showed up was through one of the exercises. My mind went off. It started criticizing me, but like for real. It wasn't like, oh, okay, we made a mistake, let's fix. No, it was, you did this. This was wrong. And then you did this, which was even more wrong. And then you did that, which was even more wrong. And you do all these wrong things because you are shameful, because you are always wrong about everything, because you are a walking disaster. And my mind went on. But then I decided to let it talk to me. So I'm in this exercise. I think it was a bit of one of those where you like close your eyes and go through the exercise. And I stopped, like, I think there was a video, so I stopped the video. I don't remember, but I know that I was like, I'm going to stop everything that I'm doing and I'm going to listen to this voice of criticism, because I want to know everything it has to say about me. I want to know about every little piece of criticism so I can get real with myself. Because if this lives inside of me, if this amount of self loathe and criticism actually lives inside of me, I want it to come out so I can look at it. And then I started feeling it in the body. So after I made this conscious decision to just let this voice talk, and trust me when I say, like, the only reason that I was able to make a conscious decision to just let this voice go on and on and on was because of everything that I was learning up to that point in Love Addicts. Um, so I was like, okay, I'm going to listen. So I started listening. And then it went to my body. I had already identified in therapy that I had feelings of shame sitting like around my stomach area, which made a lot of sense when I made that, like, which made a lot of sense because I had been struggling with like having stomach aches and things for the past few months, like before I even started therapy and Love Addicts. But in therapy, also because in therapy you kind of only get like a session and it's over, and then like you have to wait until you see your therapist again. In therapy, what happened was that I identified that feeling in my stomach. I identified that I had some shame. I even sort of identified where the shame came from, which is like way, 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 way back in the past, in childhood, like pre verbal childhood. But that's where it ended. It was like, okay, like I carry some shame. And my therapist actually did a great job at processing that with me and almost making me understand that because this was like pre verbal shame from childhood, that I was just taking on shame from other people and making it my own, you know. So like I perceive this shame in the adults around me, so I take it on to me because I guess as a child I maybe thought that, you know, their shame was my fault or whatever happens in our little heads when we are so young. But I had internalized that. But I hadn't realized the self hatred, because to me, those things feel very different after having explored them. Like, shame is one thing, like, oh, I did this or I caused this, and therefore I feel shameful. But the self hatred that I felt through this exercise in Love Addicts was much more aggressive than that. And I let that voice talk, and then when it came to the body, I felt like there was like this brown sludge running like all around me, like over me and inside of me, like this brown, like dirt, like sewage. And that I was almost like taken over by this brown sludge. And I just let it take over my whole body. So I'm sitting there doing this exercise and I can visualize, and I'm actually really bad at visualizing things, but I just let myself go so deeply into this exercise that I could imagine that brown sludge just traveling all over my body and then inside my body and through my organs and just taking over everything as that voice in my head said all these horrible things about me. And at the end of it, for some reason, instead of feeling bad, I felt better because I felt like there was so much honesty in that. And this is where another shift began happening, but like very small, because I don't think I'm like through it yet. But I didn't want to change it. Actually, no, I had like this natural instinct to say, okay, I identified self hate. I could visualize this brown sludge. Cool. Now, how do I change this into self love instead? Because self love is better. And at that point, I did not want self love for the sake of having love. I wanted self love because I had learned in life that when we love ourselves, other people love us too. And I did not want to be loved by myself. I wanted other people to love me. But I was like, okay, if loving myself is a way of getting love from other people, then I guess I'll do it. And now that I identified all the self hatred, I just want to swap it. I just want to swap it into self-love. But then, as soon as I had that thought, I was like, no, I am actually just going to stay with this. I hate myself, or at least part of me hates myself. I am rejecting myself. I am abandoning myself. It then became so clear like how I had from that place of self-hatred made some of the most painful decisions, or rather the decisions that caused me the most pain in life, from a place of self-hatred that I was completely unaware of. And then I was like, you know what? I am not going to try to fix this too. I am done trying to fix things. I am just going to allow it. This is part of me. There is a part of me that hates myself, especially, and I'm going to stay with it, and I'm going to continue listening to it. Now, this doesn't mean that I let it run like 24 hours a day. I let it run its course throughout that exercise, and then I said, okay, whenever you want to speak to me again about something that you hate about me, I'm here. And I actually think that that might have been like my first act of self love, even though it feels like the opposite. But I think what I'm learning about self love is that it's in the shadows too, right? It's very easy to love the parts of ourselves that are doing well, that are kind, that are great. But then to at least accept, because I wouldn't say like love just yet, but at least to like accept something that is in the shadow, something that comes at you with hatred. I think that was my first step towards one day maybe having self love. We'll see. We'll see as it goes. But yeah, I don't know what week this happened in, but I know it was by going through the video courses, going through the exercises, and that just snapped inside of me. And eventually I made a post, and I called that post Staying with the Bad Parts. I think that's what I called it. And I described the inner critic in my head, like really having a go at me and the brown sludge. And that post, and this is so beautiful, that post had so many responses of people that were there to, I guess, support me, to say like, yeah, stay with the bad parts, like you're gonna get through this. Like I got so much support out of that post, but also so many people identified with me. And when I think back to it, I'm like, after I had all of, like, I went through that whole process, I honestly didn't stop to think like if other people also feel this. I think sometimes I can be so immersed in my own experience. And also, I'm learning that for me, this is part of being anxious, insecure, is that I'm usually so preoccupied with hiding myself or protecting myself or whatever to like survive, that and like survive emotionally. So much of this like happened at a subconscious level that I often don't take time to assimilate that actually my experiences are not so unique to me. They're like human experiences, and that other people also experience a lot of shame and a lot of they criticize themselves a lot. And so all of these people are talking to me saying like, yes, I feel this too, but like for me it manifests like this, or my inner critic is like that. And I was like, wow, like it really works, this like sharing stuff, because then you learn from other people's experiences as well. And then the coaches and the psychologists also commented on my post. Now, these were, I think I talked about in another video about like ask an expert. And that is one section of the platform where you go and you ask a specific question, and you're only going to get a response from a psychologist or a coach. So you're going to, when you go to ask an expert inside the platform, is because you are looking for a professional response. Again, remember, like, the great thing is that the professionals are also people also living or that have healed anxious insecure attachment, so they're very important. And anyways, um but then this other post that I did was not in ask an expert. This was just in the general community, and there are sections where you will post depending on the subject of your post. And I posted this, I think, in self development, because I considered that, having listened to my inner critic and having stayed with like a negative part of me, having looked into my shadow and accepted part of my shadow into my reality, was part of my self development. So that's where the community comments. But then I also had the coaches and psychologists, because, oh my God, I don't know how many hours these people work, because they are always responding to posts. And there are like so many people in the community. There are like people post like constantly. Um, and they are always there to like say something and encourage us. And it's really great. So, yeah, amazing. Because I think it's maybe five or six coaches and psychologists, and they handle a lot of a lot of us, so they do a really 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 good job. But I also had the coaches and the psychologists comment and congratulate me on, I guess, the progress I had made, and then also kind of help me through with a bit of advice on how to keep working with my shadow and looking at my shadow. And they suggested I do things that I would never had thought of by myself. So I continued to work with this side of me that had so much self-hatred for myself. And it was actually incredibly healing to allow myself to hate myself, because that was the truth of that moment. And thank God I had other people there with me because of this platform, and I had professionals there with me through this process, um, because it became really valuable in my journey.